Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the second shelf and to another Friday Reads. I didn't do one last week, I know. I'm sort of kind of regular, but not every week. And last week I just wasn't, I was traveling last week. But I'm trying, and whenever I can, I will film a Friday Reads. I'm not even sure why I tell you this. Who cares? Let's just get into the books. The first two books I finished last week, or the last 2 weeks since my last Friday Reads, are both for the BooktubePrize. I will leave a link to the BooktubePrize channel down below. We are now at the semi-finals, almost done. End of July, the judges have to hand in their ballots. And typical me, I'm done early, of course, because I'm always afraid that I will not make it. And the last two books that I had to read were Emma Donohue, Pull of the Pull of the Stars, which is a book, a historical fiction set in 1918 in a maternity ward of a clinic, and it deals with a pandemic, not the pandemic we are dealing with now, but the influenza pandemic. And the other book I finished, I have to look up the first names of the author because I always get them the wrong way around. It's Kate Elizabeth Russell and not Elizabeth Kate Russell. My Dark Vanessa, which is set in contemporary times, and it deals it does look back because it goes back 20 years, and it looks at the relationship of a very young girl and her much older teacher, and the subject or the topic of grooming. So I finished both of those, and I will tell you more about how I felt about those books once the judging has been finalized end of July. The next book I finished is also some time ago, but I realized that I've never mentioned that I finished it, and that is a science fiction novel, C.J. Cherryh. It's too big for the screen. Down Below Station, first published in the early 1980s. This was a pick for me for this ongoing project of this year, the genre Spotlight Sci-Fi. And as you know, if you follow my channel, I try to read modern classics by female authors, of course, that I haven't read yet. And I have never read C.J. Cherryh. This was a buddy read with Terry from Miss Terry Reads, who has she read more of this author's work. So for me it was a first, but not for her. And I just didn't really get along that well with this book. It's a space opera, if you will. It's set in the future, in the 21st century, and the premise is that people from Earth have expanded into the universe and built sort of stations from where they then can explore further. And the Down Below Station is one of those, but now, after so many decades, there is a definite conflict between the people from Earth, the corporate, people wanting to exploit or explore these new planets, and people from the stations who unified, and there's also indigenous peoples on those planets. And so it's a political space opera, if you will, but I just couldn't handle the pacing. It was way too slow for me, and I couldn't get into the characters. There are a lot of characters, and the ones that I felt were drawn the best are the indigenous people on this planet, the Hisa. I thought that was really well done, but the various factions of this political conflict, almost war, you can say, yeah, it just didn't do it for me. I do wanna, it's one of her early works, that's what Terry told me also, and I certainly want to try another book by her, but this one just didn't work for me, even though it won the Nebula, I think. But yeah, it was just not my cup of tea. The next book I finished was a novella, if you look at the length, and that is Saint Joe, the Order of the Pure Moon reflected in water, published last year, 2020. And I was looking for a book to do one of the prompts for the Reading Women Challenge 2021. You probably remember that I do this challenge every year, but I never talk about it separately, only at the beginning of the year and the end of the year. And I'm almost done with that. There are 24 challenges. I will leave a link to the website of the Reading Women down below, and you should also listen to their podcast. It's fabulous. But I especially like the challenge that they come up with each year. It's always 24 prompts, and it makes me expand my reading horizon, because I really have to look for books that I probably normally wouldn't read. And the prompt for this novella by Saint Joe was read a fantasy novel by an Asian author. Saint Joe is a Malaysian author living in Britain, and I read another novella by her earlier this last year, I think, or the year before, and I quite like the style. And as you know, I'm not a huge fantasy reader, so I didn't want to commit to 1,000, page book. So I chose a novella, and this one was it was delightful. It was really delightful. It's a fantasy in terms of there is magic involved, and the premise is that you have this band, this group of thieves, and we later learn why they became thieves, who in a restaurant encounter an ex-nun who works there as a waitress, because her nunnery, her monastery has been burned down or something. That's what we gather. And she decides, this nun is quite feisty and, knows strong-willed, which I love. And she decides to join this group of thieves. And then, action and plot takes off from there. And like I said, we learn the background, why this group of people is now into thievery, because of course they are not regular thieves and they're not bad guys. And then there is the banter between this nun and the group of thieves, but in particular two of the thieves. And it was just a delight. The story was nice, about typical fantasy, stolen, I mean, not that stolen goods as typical fantasy, but a little bit of magic, and in a land that is not ours. And it was just a delight. So those are some of the books that I finished in the last 2 weeks. Not all of them, because as you know, I always do my tops and flops. And when I'm sure that a book is either going to be in the tops or in the flops, I don't mention it in my regular Friday Reads videos. So there are some books that I read that you will hear more about in the tops and flops end of the month. On to the books that I either started or am still reading. And the first one is a book that I picked up, Alicia Elliott, A Mind Spread Out on the Ground, which was published, let me check, 2019. And I talked about this book earlier, that I came across it on Script by accident. It's a memoir. Alicia Elliott is an Indigenous Canadian writer, and it's about depression. A Mind Spread Out on the Ground is the Indigenous metaphor or term if you suffer from depression. And I really liked it. Then I ordered the book in hard copy, because I wanted to have it, I want to have a copy of my own, not only on Script. And I read the first 20 pages, and I really liked it. And then I just left it for no particular reason whatsoever. So I picked this back up finally, and I hope I'm planning on finishing it in July, because I really liked the style. Alicia Elliott is pretty big on Twitter. I started following her on Twitter, and she is quite outspoken, which I appreciate. But this memoir looks at depression from the perspective of an indigenous woman. And that is an interesting perspective. And I really want to, not put this book down again and then just forget about it for 2 months or something. That's so stupid. I don't know whether that happens to you sometimes, that you pick up a book and you really like it. And it's not that you have to force yourself or anything, but then for no good reason, you just leave it lying there. I don't know. Weird. The next book I picked up is for a Goodreads read-along, but as you know, I suck at read-alongs, so most of the time I don't really participate. But when I like the book that is picked, I will pick up the book and read it anyway. And this read-along is Read So Lit, organized by Didi from Brown Girl Reading. And in July we are reading Old Drift by Namvali Serpel. This is a novel set in what is now Zambia. Back then, when the novel opens in the early 20th century, late 19th century, it's still called Rhodesia. And it's a multi-generational tale focusing on 3 generations of women. So you have the grandmothers, the mothers, and the children. And in the children, there's also, I think, a son, but the book is really focusing on the women. I'm not that far in because it is quite a chunker. And I'm not sure whether it's really my kind of book yet. But this is a debut, by the way, and it won something, as you can see on the printed sticker that is on the book, and that makes me really happy. But it's interesting. It's certainly interesting. So it might not be completely for me, but I'm really happy that Didi picked this one, and that I'm glad that I picked it up. Oh, and I should have said, first of all, that Namvali Serpel is an author born in Zambia, but she now teaches in Berkeley. And I don't think I mentioned the publication date. I'm not sure. It's 2019 of the novel. I should add that as well. And the last book that I started this week is an essay collection published in 2019 and that's Morgan Jerkins. And I always want to say Jenkins, but it's Jerkins. Her name is Jerkins. Morgan Jerkins. This Will Be My Undoing. I'm buddy reading this with Kathleen, who used to have a YouTube channel called Kathleen Ann, but she hasn't been active in almost a year. But she is still active on Instagram, so I will leave her Instagram the link to her Instagram account down below. And we are, since I would say last year sometime, we started to read literature, and especially nonfiction, about racism, feminism, and also the intersection of racism and feminism. And this book, this essay collection by Morgan Jerkins, is on the intersection of racism and feminism, because Morgan Jerkins is a Black American author. We just read the first 3 essays, checked in yesterday, and I thought they were really, really excellent. She looks at her own life growing up. She's now 28, and she is a writer and a journalist, or journalist in the sense that she also publishes in newspapers, not a journalist, reporting the news. But anyway, so she looks at her own experience growing up as a Black girl, and she's very light-skinned, and then expands to the broader political issue. And so far, like I said, we have only read 3 of the 10 or 11 essays, but they are really, really good and really thought-provoking and well-written. And yeah, I hope the collection continues like this. So these are the books that I want to talk to you about in my Friday Reads. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. As always, I'm very much looking forward to your comments, and I'm all caught up. So just hit me with the comments, and I'll see you all soon in the next one.